Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. So on my YouTube channel, there's a video that I talk about Eros and Cupid on. And it's a very important video. And I talk about how it's ridiculous to make it so that Cupid/Eros resembles the so-called Archangel Michael image, which is a false image, right? These are kind of rich white Westerners and influential cult Westerners. They're governing class family lines expression, and they're acting like that they're divine, and the idea is like propaganda for the state of Rome at the time and for the Roman people to make it seem like they're doing the right thing. You know, when there's colosseums, all kinds of rape and slavery and murder, all kinds of greed and all sorts of evil, they want to pretend that magically they're doing the right thing. And we see the same thing in every nation in the world today in their own sort of way. Okay, even North Korea, you know, even though there's, in a sense, less religious components, one can argue no religious components, right? But communism is a religion in its own right. It comes from very religious cult people who had an agenda for the world. These people have idols and all that stuff, okay? Them and their allies. So when we look at this thing, we know that the West is up to no good with their Christianity and the whole world is up to no good. Why? Well, first of all, the Catholics obviously were doing the wrong thing the whole time. So are the early Orthodox and so on and so forth. People don't want to hear this stuff, but it needs to be said. Then we have the Protestants. They come and they point to the Bible arguably more than the Catholics and the Orthodox did, and the other groups of the time who were pointing to the Bible. And they say that magically, the Bible is magically infallible. And I say it that way so they don't take me out of context. And that's crazy, right? Again, the Bible is made by people who are in the spirit of a spirit that inspired the idea of the Riddler, the Joker, and the Jigsaw. If we look at the rich governing class families, you study them enough, you look at their various pictures, you'll see that they resemble the Penguin at times, they resemble the Riddler, the Jigsaw. These are known Western spirits that have been there for a long time. Kind of white, Jewish, LGBT spirits. And they probably start in Africa in some form, go through the Middle East, almost certainly. But certainly by the time we get there, it's clear. And we see things that are similar in Sumerian statues, if that's what that was, right? Mesopotamian, one way or another, that are similar enough to we have to say that it almost certainly started there. Okay, maybe it started in Europe on a fluke and came down there. I don't know. But certainly the West are the main people that propounded it, that spread it across the world. So now think about this. You got to understand cause and effect. Okay? How many of you, if your child asked you for a fish, you would give them a snake? Or they asked you for an egg, you give them something harmful. Okay? So if you know how to give good gifts, what Christ was saying as a character in the story, how much more does God? Why would God give you a Bible that confuses you? And that if you are a righteous person trying to explain, you have difficulty. But when the wicked person tries to explain, because they don't explain the metaphors, okay, and they certainly don't explain them accurately, and they're certainly not persecuted, which makes it harder to explain things, right? Especially when you're fumed and drugged, and that's part of what's in the Bible, the pharmakeia, okay? That they have an easy time to explaining. And they seem like experts, and now they've been doing it for a long time, and the righteous person's not going to last a long time. You know? Almost certainly, if he does, by the time he's been talking for 30 years or so, he's going to be babbling on, so to speak, sounding crazy because he's been persecuted while the state-sponsored bootlicker hasn't. And so it is with the reason why they depicted the Archangel Michael as Eros. First of all, the story is faulty. There's universal truths in there that they touch on, that they conceal, and they confuse you about what to do. And it's there for rape nations to get you to be their slaves and to turn the other cheek instead of fighting to the death. When you compare the two side by side, you get the fighting to the death in the vast majority of situations. Not in my situation, because I'm fumed and poisoned, and they're watching me, and they make it so even if I wanted to do that, it wouldn't really work. But in the vast majority of situations, it's clearly preferred. I'll debate anybody on this at any time. I've seen that, this Driscoll pastor, he said if someone came to kill his family, that he would resist him. What if you knew for sure that you weren't going to win? Okay? But they're going to rape you and kill your family anyway. You fight to the death. And how many preachers and priests would say otherwise? But they confuse you about who, what, when, where, how, why, which is exactly what the state would expect and what the state-sponsored preachers would do. And Set is a deity of confusion, so is Zeus. Storms, confusion, chaos, disorder, darkness. It is impossible to be of sound mind and to hear this argument and to think that you should follow them instead of me. The throne is established in righteousness. They got that right. The throne of the righteous person. Not some worldly throne, not the beast. The beast's head stands for kings. The beast's horn stands for kings. The worldly kings are evil. Their throne is established in being a devil beast. But my throne is established in righteousness, and it's a throne which means my right to lead, my right to demand people's submission, my right to give divine verdicts, Proverbs 16:10. They're right about that too. Sometimes they're pretty straightforward. But they have a certain pattern of teaching which gives away that it comes from Set and Zeus and groups that think like that, that's there to mislead you. And look at your nations, ladies and gentlemen. Count the Christians, count the Muslims, count the Jews. They have a similar pattern of teaching in the Quran and in the Torah. Okay? How come this society is so evil with so many people who read those books or who promote those books, if those books haven't failed you miserably? And look at the light workers and the atheists. They make similar mistakes because their cultures are wrong too. Every culture you see is wrong, but mine. And you know by the actions, by the deeds, by the works, wisdom is proved right by her deeds. The Bible has that right too. But they confuse you about what scale to use. The scale is universal, pinpointed, moral precision. That's why it says in the Bible, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? There's little breadcrumbs here and there. It's a labyrinth. It's a riddle. It's a jigsaw. I've solved it enough. But I didn't need to solve it to know what's right. The reason why I didn't start going to church as a kid, and I still don't go to church, is because I knew right away that the church people treat me unfairly. The communities that they influence treat me unfairly. They date with scales of white supremacy and greed and money and shallow scales that they use. And the shallow scales that they use. And therefore they can't be trusted with something as important as God's commands. Thank you.